So welcome to the Node.js Next 10 meeting for March 2nd, 2022. We will follow the agenda that we had in the issue that was created for the current meeting. And actually, let me just find that and also promote Joe. I will also start by putting the issue that so that people can add them to the agenda into the Slack here. If people could do that, that would be great. Copy that. Okay, so before we get started on the issues in the agenda, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make?
No.
Okay. So let's go on to the first issue, which is identifying next mini summit topics. So we opened an issue and started to discuss that a little bit last time. But the goal is to kind of come up with, okay, what topics and sort of when. The suggestion was that we should think about like the OpenJS World 2022 in terms of topics as well. See if some might be better one place versus the other. So, I'm thinking what's the best way? Probably the best way is to look at the technical priorities we have in the repo. So I'm going to navigate there. Open to any other suggestions if people have a better way to sort of look at what the topics might be.
I think last meeting we were speaking about reviewing the plan for modern HTTP. Maybe this part could be done during the summit.
Right. Okay. So like in terms of like, yeah. So you mean the summit at OpenJS World or just the
next? So, sorry, the summit during the OpenJS World. Yes, of course.
Okay. So I'm going to take a note there underneath. We have an issue for this 2022. So, but that's so review HTTP, modern HTTP plan / progress. Yeah, that's good. And here I'll go and share my screen so that you can see everybody can see the notes I'm taking.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of like the next topics, we could go through this list and like we've done a session on modern HTTP. We've got the session on suitable types for end users. We did the session on documentation. We haven't done one on WebAssembly, ESM, observability, permissions, policy security module, multi-threaded support, and we did do one on single executable applications. So what do people think would be the most important one from these other priorities to schedule?
I think it will really depend. I think a lot of people will be or could be interested with WebAssembly, with more and more feature, and with both the Node API part and linking to the WASM part could be great. And also maybe the security part. I saw a lot of concern about the new flag with the HTTP imports. Okay. So could we link that to the security / policy?
Any other thoughts from people of what's important to? We can probably come up with a longer list because if we're thinking about both the next mini summit and the in-person one, we can come up with our top say 4 and then figure out maybe when and where to do those. Although looking at it, maybe, okay. So we've got about 6 that we haven't gone through. So what would other people's next most important be?
Because I was thinking ESM also, but it's quite let's say hard to talk about it.
Yeah, I wonder if ESM and observability make sense to talk about in the same kind of pairing, because
Yep.
there's some relation there and you might capture the similar groups of people.
Yeah, and I think, there's lots more to talk about on ESM, but one of the challenges is observability. So it would be nice to have people who are knowledgeable about both, actually. That's a pretty good point.
I kind of, if this is a case of looking for which two make sense in person, like if possible in person, which two make sense virtual, my gut would be the WASM and security ones, because they're slightly more specific, might make sense to be virtual, I think. Whereas ESM and observability, I feel like everyone, whoever's in the room would be interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So basically we are, so Beth, and then the WASM virtual. That definitely makes sense to me too. So yeah. Looking at the priors, okay, so then that would leave, we would have covered documentation, ESM support for features, okay, observability, permissions policy, security model. That would leave better multi-threaded support.
Yeah, with ECMAScript respect.
Support for features, right. Yeah, okay, right. And that one, I think that's okay too, because like we do a fairly, we keep up with V8, which is where we drive that. So it's good to discuss, but probably less likely that there's something we need to do there to improve. Okay, that sounds good to me in terms of the, sort of a plan. Let's so go ahead.
The security one, is there anything, that's a very wide topic. Is there anything specific we want to list under that, just so we can make sure we have the correct people in the room?
I think when we discussed about it, it was a lot linked to the policy and way that they know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I was thinking it was linked to how they know we're working with security to allow only policy to some file system or stuff like that. Okay, but I was wrong, I think.
No, I think it's like what we said is like one challenge we have is we don't actually have a security model documented, right? And documenting that will drive discussions on what we should not do to some extent. So I think that's a great place for us to sort of start and say, okay, what is our security model? How do we document it? And then that can lead into like, okay, this is our security model, but that doesn't mean we don't want to provide features along the lines of what you talked about, like Dino provide some of these extra things, which arguably, you can't say that they're actually going to protect you in all sorts of situations, but they still help people manage risk. And that's where, we can get into like, okay, what are these other things we think add value, right?
Right.
Because that's a very interesting, we've had lots of discussions, and actually at some of the collaborator summits, we've even had discussions on those, that it's always well, is the runtime the right place to put those protections? Or like if you're deploying in containers, well, you should just make sure that the Docker container protects you from some of those things. So anyway, I think that's building from like, here's the model that we want to provide, that says like, what things do you have to have? And then we can get into that discussion of, well, what other things help, even if they're not strictly within the security model, will help people. Or But I think it would be like, so maybe we focus on, you know, I don't know, Beth, to your question, like what's in this, what's like, let's have a working session to define our security model. And then, you know, maybe then the discussion on what other features, even, you know, what other features do we think would be useful, beneficial, or critical, I guess, to the future success,
Yeah,
even
I
if
think
they're not strictly covered by that model.
yeah, I think so. Being clear that that's our first aim, and it may lead into some of these other things. I think that makes sense because I'm pretty sure, like policies and things like that, could actual discussion around features we could implement could fill a whole session on its own.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can, so I think I'll just move the minutes in discussion. So like, we could basically say that we want the next mini summit is going to be WASM and security. And then ESM and observability will be topics for the OpenJS world, right? I think on that one, it would be good. We could spend maybe a little bit of time. You know, to talk about what is it that we think we would want to cover. Like, we've got 2 topics, so I think it would be good to say, let's plan some time to try and go into those 2 topics because we're there in person. We've already added this review modern HTTP plan progress. Are there other sessions? I think, Beth, you might have suggested that we try and get like a common session intro.
Yeah, like if we have like a kickoff, like we often have at the start of the day, I think everyone should be aware of this effort. So having a session there makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember if it was you, Beth, or Michael. Last time you suggested also to have, let's say, a feedback about the Next 10 initiative.
Right.
What we do, what we did, and how, maybe not how we work, but the main subject we are trying to work on, at least.
I think we could cover it in underneath there, right? Like, did you say feedback, or is it a, were you thinking like to teach people, or not teach people, but like bring people up to speed, or is it more retrospective, or what were you thinking on that
I'm
front?
pretty sure about that. I did only one collaborator summit, so not really sure how it went before that.
We
I know.
really, sorry, go ahead.
It's just I remember a very early one. We did run something called user feedback retros or something. I wonder if it's worth having. You know, we did the whiteboard session like when we first started Next 10.
Yeah.
Trying to do one of those again to seeing, you know, a refreshed list.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I was thinking, yeah. So it's kind of like review technical priorities. Maybe that's baseline review, maybe. And because we had these, we also have, and I'm finding those right now. Right. Technical values. Oops. And then we had, I think there were the end user. Yeah, where is it? I'm gonna say we probably have, right, these constituencies and needs. Is that kind of what you were thinking? That we would go over those, and we could do kind of the same similar whiteboard sessions to I don't know whether we'd want those to be like primed with what we had there or do new ones but that it's a good opportunity to with a broader audience, hopefully.
Yeah, I think in terms of timing, it makes sense to review them and then open up like a whiteboard session saying, hey, are any values, constituencies, or technical areas that are not listed that we think should be listed? That's probably the most efficient way of doing it, rather than going back and starting from absolute zero again.
Yeah.
Building on it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Baseline review, start with review of what we have, then whiteboard session to brainstorm additions, removal, right? We could sort of cast it in that, like, here's what we have, what do you think is no longer relevant? What do you think is missing? That kind of thing.
I think this is a good idea. My only concern is I remember having long conversations about some of these things, and I worry that we could just get right back into the weeds or something. Just to be mindful, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's like we could time box it to.
Yeah, time box and have some sort of off ramp, like, if we feel like there's more conversation needs to happen, then maybe in an interview or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we can always, do a follow-on virtual or whatever. But I like the idea of just the white space brainstorm to say, like, what do you think isn't relevant? What do you think is missing? Because that might catch some things.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like you said, like going into the like, we don't want to get back into the bike shedding of things necessarily, because that we could do offline. It's more the idea generation side of things.
Yeah. And another thought I have that is maybe slightly off topic, but I'll just throw out there real quickly is how I'm wondering how to get how to encourage sessions at the Collab Summit. Is there I guess we just need to raise awareness and expect that different groups and areas of focus will self-organize, or do we think that we should help in that effort in any way?
I think in the past, there's been like an organizing committee, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen any sort of call or, that hopefully what we see is some people who are interested in organizing it. And then, there was a repo where it's like, hey, submit your issues and stuff like that.
Yeah. I worry that we need to be, that needs to be happening. And I'm not sure who's doing it.
I agree. So the question is, how does the Collaborator Summit itself get organized?
Yeah. And maybe, like I said, it's off topic, but that's something that's on my mind.
I think it's a bit of a separate topic, but I think what should happen is we should open an issue in the Node repo.
Okay. Node core.
Didn't you suggest that like the CPC do that across the projects?
Yeah, I feel like that was suggested.
Because I think the issue saying, hey, we've got space for Node at the conference, some details like that says, hey, you've got a room for 2 days, do we have any volunteers to start organizing would be a great help.
Yeah.
So, if that's not going to happen from that sort of, that suggestion, maybe we should just go and, any one of us can go open that issue.
Yeah, I almost wonder if, as I think this tends to happen, Node can kind of lead the way. We can maybe create an issue and then show it to CPC. Yep. Other folks can be like, oh yeah, I'll open one just like that elsewhere. I think I'll just say as an aside, I think we're feeling the pain of not having Jory around. She's great at helping put some of these things on. I think she comes back pretty soon, but yeah.
Do you have the details for like the days and rooms and stuff?
I can get the details.
Okay. So, I mean, if you get those details, you can either open the issue or like you can, if you send them to me, I'm happy to open the issue too.
Okay.
I just think that like, it's good to have some concrete stuff versus just, hey, we know what's happening. If we can gather the the concrete info we have, stick it in, hopefully that kicks some stuff off.
Yeah, I'll go ping the channel right now, and then maybe you and I can just Slack for a few once I get the details to make sure we've got enough to spur engagement. Thanks.
Sounds good. Okay, so sort of back to the next 10 sessions there. So a common session, I think that's one, hopefully to get people involved in the plan and even just being aware of like the docs that we have and contributing to help keep those alive, like not alive, but like up to date and to reflecting what we think, I think is important. Reviewing modern HTTP plan progress is good. A baseline review. And then 2 technical deep dives. Anything else people think we should try and do there?
I think it's already quite a lot because
yeah,
for each summit, I think we block 4 hours. I don't know during this one how many times we want to block and stay together. I think if I remember right, last time it was 2 or 3 hours for each collaborator summit.
Yeah, I think we have, Joe, was it 2 days?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So like, yeah, like a 3-hour or 4-hour block might end up being, or sometimes it'd be like 2 2-hour blocks but I'd agree, like this will probably be more than enough. Like the 2 technical deep dives can fill up a good amount of time. So I'd be pretty happy if we got through all this. And as we get closer, we can kind of see like how much time can we get.
Yeah, because sorry, Michael.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because last time when we were in Montreal, I think there is also a working group related to observability.
Yeah, so there may be like some other, right. So there may be some groups like through the diagnostics working group or whatever who propose sessions.
Yeah.
And so we might sort of leverage those even to, cover the next 10 aspect as well as whatever other discussions, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we can kind of see what other proposals and maybe piggyback on some of those. So it would make a lot of sense. Okay, so that seems like we have a pretty good outline here. I'm going to take that and I will put it into that issue. Okay. Discussion from the meeting today. That's gonna look okay. Okay, and then in terms of our next summit, let's see, we've got WASM and security. Spoken in the meeting today. Okay. And I guess then the question would be when.
Yeah.
So OpenJS World is June, right?
Yeah, 8 to 10, something like that, I think.
So how many days? I'm going to say. 92 days. Okay.
Should be mid-April. Yeah.
Right. Does that seem like a decent time to plan for one, earlier, later?
Seems good.
Yeah, mid-April makes sense. There is holidays around that time, just that we might not want to go too close to.
Yeah. So what?
I think it's around the 20th. It's like Easter or 17th. I'm not sure. It's around there.
Right. Maybe like a week earlier.
Yeah, I think so. And also, Node 18 comes out the following week, so doing it the week before probably makes sense.
Yeah. So like April. I don't want to necessarily show my whole calendar, so I'm going to take a look at that separately. So if we look at, so Thursday, April 7th.
Yeah, I think that gives a good amount of time to prep for it, like a month's notice.
Yeah. It does conflict potentially with the TSC meeting, but I don't think that's necessarily a huge deal. I don't know. What do people think?
We can even move or get a co-host. I mean, it's quite common that we skip the occasional meeting, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the, maybe if we, once we get that set up, I'll propose we move that one to a different time because. Okay. So March 7th. Okay, I'm going to put that into that issue. Do I have that open? Okay, so then the question would be, are there people that we can think of that we should be inviting? Maybe, like, I don't know if there's any volunteers for opening the issue for the next mini summit.
I can do it.
Okay. So we'll open. I think we have a good template in the past ones.
Yeah.
And then basically if people can think about and, you know, maybe mention, or we can talk about in that issue who we want to make sure is there, right?
Yeah, I think for the WASM part, the Node API working group could be also added because it's quite linked.
Yeah, that would be a good, yeah. And then there, you know, obviously the modules, team modules. You know, that might be one where it's like, they're like, oh, we're all on top of that. We know what's going on. We don't need to have a discussion or whatever, but it's a good place to start the discussion. Okay, so I think that's pretty good progress on the next mini summit. Anything else we should talk about on that this week?
No, seems good.
Okay, I think on the next 10, let me just double check the no new panels. Okay, on the next one, we've already discussed as well, like the Summit OpenJS World 2022. So I think we have a good outline there. And so we've got whatever data we need for when, like, you know, there's a place to submit suggestions and stuff like that. Anything more on that one we should discuss before we move on? If not, okay, let's look at the next one, which is create communications channel to JS newsletters periodicals. I think we had a few suggestions of the outlets. The only question is, I guess, like, does anybody have any contacts or at any of these places?
No.
Okay, Note Weekly. I think we have an opportunity to reach out to them as well.
Yeah, Node Weekly and JS Weekly are both run by what's his name? Cooper Press guy. His name's escaping me.
Right.
I
I was
don't
just
know.
thinking there's a conversation going on. We can't necessarily, but maybe that's an opportunity to say, hey, this is something we're interested in doing.
Mhm.
So maybe, like, Joe, could you and I take an action to maybe try and reach out through that discussion?
Yeah, which discussion are you referring to?
I don't really want to go into the details because I don't think it's public,
Sure.
but
Yeah,
it was
okay.
discussed in the CPC. And so you might have some knowledge that I don't have, but anyway, we'll take an action to,
Yeah.
MidApril slash. So they're Node and JS Weekly. Okay, so I think that's a good next step on that one, and then we can see how that goes. There's a reminder for us to do that. Okay, discuss. Okay, so then the suitable types, next steps, deep dive, next steps. So this one I think is on the list to make sure we continue to make progress on this. My understanding is that, you know, we've got some things we want to change in our style guide, which will help us then generate JSON structured documentation more effectively. There's been some, I know Tierney's done some work on that front. I did talk to him about it this week. And, you know, so hopefully we're going to be looking to get some PRs into the style guide to help facilitate that, but we're kind of still working on that in terms of next steps. I don't think there's anything else. Let's see, I'm looking at, so starting the discussion of adopting the style guide, we've started that. I think some of these other ones, we may need to think about how we have like a follow-on discussion. Although I think our best bet is to get that first concrete step done in terms of the style guide, and then maybe we can schedule some follow-on discussions. Unless people have other suggestions, or if anybody has a particular, you know, interest in taking the lead on one of these areas, also that's a good way to get stuff going. But outside of that, I would suggest we wait till we get the first step done. Okay, that takes us to the end of the agenda. Are there any other things we should talk about this week?
That I can think of.
Okay, well, if not, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. See everybody later.
Bye.
Oh, Bradley, I'm just promoting you.